Recently, I shared a clip from Jeff Grubb where he's reporting that Mass Effect 5 will not be released until 2029 at the earliest. And later on that day, he shared some more info behind this possibility. Let me play the clip so you can hear the context of what he said.
And yet now N7 comes along. It seems to be coming from a place of, well, it's N7, we should do something. And they did, and now that game is, as far as I've heard, I wouldn't expect it before 2028 at the earliest, but 2029, 2030, that's not off the table for that game. And it's 2023. What are we doing here?
It almost like solidifies and compounds the need for something more, because you have a day like N7 come off, and I don't know about you, I definitely saw the sentiment on Twitter where that teaser came out. It was a whole rigmarole to get there. And then when it came out, people were like, okay, we got a teaser. Watched it, and then we're like, we know nothing about the game still. Mm-hmm. It's a CG teaser. We had like a Mike Gamble come out and be like, this is in-engine, but I saw people saying it, and I definitely felt kind of empty after that. I was like, I still don't have anything to really grab onto. Other than that teaser, what have I got? For N7 I've got merch that I can buy, which is like, not a great situation, and it has in a lot of ways become the tone of that game, which is exactly what they want to avoid, right? Like now we're in a situation where that frustration is part of the identity of Mass Effect for a lot of people.
To have an opportunity like N7 come along and ignore it for like several years in a row with new stuff, new teasers, which they have done recently, I could find that being difficult internally. And yet, it's like, when is the right time? Maybe there is no right answer to that, but it also feels like that emptiness might end up chewing away at the confidence in this game. If we get a couple years from now and we still haven't heard anything new, that could be really troublesome for both the people working on the game and the fans of the series.
Developers and publishers usually want to get the game into a state where it's like a good vertical slice that they can show off. That can take, given how early we know this game is in development, that could take a good few years. So we are now looking at it, for people who are paying attention, now looking at staring down the barrel of another long wait until the next N7 when we'll get a crumb of more information.
I think it's very likely we might not get another crumb of information at any point, whether it's N7 the Game Awards, Summer Game Fest, from Mass Effect for several years. Like we're more likely to get Dreadwolf DLC or something like that over the next couple of years than anything like from Mass Effect.
And first off, this is an interesting topic to discuss, but I strongly disagree with Grubb here that there won't be any future N7 reveals. BioWare has picked it up these last few years with both Dragon Age Day and N7 and I see no reason for them to be backpedaling on this, especially because at this point, it's more of an expectation from the fandom. And while I don't want to focus on negativity, I do want to talk about what they said. This rumor has started quite the debate in the Mass Effect community, and while it may be true, and Grubb has been known to be a reputable insider, especially when it comes to BioWare, Tom Henderson also posted this, with a 3 to 4 year timeline, different than Grubb's. So honestly, at this point, believe who you want to believe or don't believe anyone. But either way, wait until BioWare officially announces the release date themselves. With that said though, I do want to talk about games that are announced way before they're released, and if that could be the case for Mass Effect 5. And I think this opens up a larger conversation around game development, and I specifically want to talk about this tweet that Mike Gamble made on N7 When Gamble posted the teaser clip, someone replied to it and said, "Mike, I'm sorry, but I don't think being coy and secretive after making people wait for so long with no details is the right call. You need to start winning people back, and today's trailer was just more nothing. This isn't cute like it was back in the mid-2010s. And while I think this comment was harsh and a bit unfair, it isn't a new sentiment I've seen in the fan base. Gamble actually does reply though, saying, "Fair take, there are details in there. Ones which give you more than you might think. You'll get all the answers you want, should you want them, eventually." And Gamble acknowledging this is a fair take is honestly fair. I think that while this person was being kind of rude, they do have a point. How much longer can BioWare go just teasing information without confirming anything? And if this game doesn't come out until several years from now, how long can this realistically go on? And I also want to say gamers aren't entitled to anything. Devs can show when they're ready to show it, when they're ready to show it. And we should want that. We shouldn't be rushing them or wanting to see stuff that isn't ready. But if BioWare is going to continue doing N7-day teases every year, which I hope they do, will the novelty of teases and hints, but no solid information, wear off? And in Gamble's reply, he says you'll get all the answers you want should you want them, eventually. I think he's kind of saying, if you want to stick around, that's up to you, and honestly, yeah, fair. We know that BioWare is changing, which I'll get more into later, but they have supposedly moved away from crunch, and I don't want the dev team to crunch either, and feel rushed. But I do think gamers need to feel reassured and like their investment will matter. And the person who replied to Gamble said you need to start winning people back. And yeah, I think a lot of fans do feel this way. I see it in a lot of fandom circles and in my comments quite often. Some people have even given up on the next game, which I think is a little bit silly, but that's their decision. And I do think the Mass Effect team should be trying to win back the fan base that both felt misled by Andromeda, both with its marketing and maybe its content, and don't want that to happen again, and also win back the Andromeda fans who both didn't like the game, but also the fans who liked the game and felt abandoned. There's several different types of fans who feel like they don't trust BioWare yet. So, realistically, if this game isn't launching for several years, will Gamble and the team need to finalize info sooner rather than later? Was launching that trailer in 2020 too early? And how long can they tease vague hints and clues? Grubb also talks about N7-Day and how it's essentially Mass Effect marketing. And yeah, of course, I don't think anyone is really surprised by that. Part of the marketing beginning so early is obviously to keep conversations around the game going. It brings in new developers to the studio, it keeps merch sales up, and again, keeps the game relevant. But I also think there's a side of this that can build fan resentment too. And I think this tweet shows that. Since N7-Day, after the hype kind of wore down, I've seen several people frustrated that we still don't know any concrete information about the game. Everything from N7-Day was amazing, but I do see people frustrated that we still don't know if Shepard is returning, and we still don't know when the game is taking place, which are probably the two biggest questions. The blog post itself even teased Shepard. The first trailer teased it with the helmet, and this additional teaser still left that door open. And while I think there's fun to the speculation for sure, I do think there's a frustration to it as well. I just don't think it's sustainable either. If you look at the Dragon Age fandom, it has kind of already built a frustration towards the game, and some even a hostile sentiment because they're tired of waiting, tired of being teased, and also tired of the lack of communication. And if Mass Effect 5 releases between 2028 and 2030, how do they handle that? Can they keep doing N7-Day where they reveal a little bit more every year? At some point, does the novelty wear off? Can BioWare keep fan sentiment positive with years of teasing vague information? It's really hard to know. I mean, look at Elder Scrolls or Grand Theft Auto. These games are so desperately wanted by the community and are still a ways away. Elder Scrolls more than Grand Theft Auto. So you have these games that were teased and then kind of radio silence for the following years. And fans are definitely frustrated. And I do also kind of think that this will be the new norm. On one hand, I understand why companies do this for all the reasons I mentioned above. But is this dangerous marketing? Is this sustainable marketing? Does this create a sustainable fan base? I don't know. Realistically, I'm just a fan, so I don't know how they can even properly navigate these aspects of fandom and marketing. And no, the Mass Effect team shouldn't and doesn't have to tell us anything until they're ready. As fans, we are not entitled to information or release dates. But I have to wonder if Grubb is right If this game is not coming out for 6 more years at the earliest, how do they navigate what that even looks like? How do you keep fans engaged once a year for so long when you already have fans upset that we don't have any confirmation of anything 3 years after the game's first announcement? Personally, I love Mass Effect, so I know I will still get excited every year, but I'll also be in my 40s in 2030, and I can't imagine how it must be for fans who are older. It's hard to look that far into the future and be excited. All of this aside, I genuinely want the game to succeed. I know the devs working on it are so passionate, and I hope they're given the proper space, time, and resources to make the game happen that both makes the devs and fans happy. But I just also think there should be some realistic expectations too. If it won't be until 2029, like Grubb says, then maybe say, hey, we are several years out from development, and here's where we are in the timeline. And as I said in my other video, I do think they need to reveal if Shepard is returning at some point, and some point rather soon. As delusional as it is, myself and several other people thought that might be Shepard in the trailer that we got. And I don't want to keep feeling like that every time there's a new reveal. So yeah, I think that there needs to be realistic expectations set by the dev team and their marketing. You also have to wonder if BioWare will release anything to fill the gaps. Will that rumored Mass Effect show happen? Will new books or comics be released? Will there be other things to keep the Mass Effect fanbase interested outside of the N7 day once a year? So going forward, I just think this is an interesting conversation. Can these studios maintain these 10-year-long development cycles? Grand Theft Auto 6 is apparently costing between $1 and $2 billion, compared to Grand Theft Auto 5's budget, which was less than $300 million. So if you have these very long development cycles, where studios only have one anticipated upcoming release, realistically, how do you financially support that? I'm not a dev, so what do I know? But it does seem unreasonable. And I'm not worried about Mass Effect's staying power. The franchise, the name, the logo have longevity. I don't really think it's about whether or not people will show up to buy the game, but more about the trust in the fanbase. I guess it's hard to say. Rockstar's post about Grand Theft Auto being announced without any actual info has 1.5 million likes. So maybe this entire conversation doesn't really mean anything. I just wonder how this is going to affect game development in the future. And we've already seen the use of AI slowly creeping into the video game industry, trying to replace artists, designers, actors, and voice actors. And it's becoming worse and worse. With just yesterday, the co-founder of DreamWorks saying that in the next 3 years, AI will replace animators and artists who create their movies. I've seen the same sentiment in gaming spaces for the last few years too. Studios have fired devs to replace them with AI, based off of the years of their artist's work. It's really fucked up. It's this dystopian future we're transitioning into, where these studios might start favoring AI over real people, especially if it will save them a buck. It's an unfortunate reality, and while the devs you respect and are rooting for are the ones actually making these games, it's the executives and CEOs who are hoarding the money, resources, and are the ones making the decisions about the future of the industry. There's been talks about a strike in the game industry after all these recent labor movements, and I really do think it'll have a domino effect into games. The games industry needs to unionize. After all these layoffs, after all these mergers, after so many changes in the industry, devs need to protect themselves, and I do feel a shift coming. And I also just want to say that I'm not mad that we didn't really get any concrete information. Yes, I wish we did, but the speculation is really interesting and fun to me. But I just more wanted to comment on something that I see pretty prevalent throughout the fan base now. So let me know what your thoughts specifically on that are. So how do you feel about this topic? What do you think about what was said to Gamble and his response? Are you frustrated that there haven't been any concrete details released about Mass Effect 5? Or are you okay with all the vague hints and teases we've gotten? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching.